And a little later than advertised, we come to A Century of Poetry. Anthony Thwaite continues his exploration of the 19th century by looking at some of the poetry of the second decade of the century.
In the first of these programmes, we heard the young Byron being rude about, among others, Geoffrey and the Edinburgh Review and Wordsworth. In 1810, the year with which the present programme begins, Wordsworth published his long poem, The Excursion, and Geoffrey began his review of it with the famous words, "This will never do." But by now, no matter what Geoffrey might say in prose or Byron in verse, Wordsworth, at the age of 40, had indubitably arrived. By the time he moved into Rydal Mount in 1813, he was so famous that he exasperatedly had to move his study from the ground floor upstairs, so distracted by uninvited worshippers tramping up the drive to stare at the desk-bound poet. The general consensus today would be that by now Wordsworth had written almost all his best work, though I'm saving the revised version of the prelude for a later programme. Even so, there are gleanings from this decade, as well as the next, and even the one after that. In June 1812, Wordsworth's second daughter, Catherine, died, 3 months short of her 4th birthday. This sonnet commemorates the event.
Surprised by joy, impatient as the wind, I turned to share the transport. Oh, with whom but thee? Deep buried in the silent tomb, that spot which no vicissitude can find. Love, faithful love, recalled thee to my mind. But how could I forget thee? Through what power, even for the least division of an hour, have I been so beguiled as to be blind to my most grievous loss? That thought's return was the worst pang that sorrow ever bore, save one only, when I stood forlorn, knowing my heart's best treasure was no more, that neither present time nor years unborn could to my sight that heavenly face restore.
As many have done, then and since, Byron linked Coleridge with Wordsworth. In Byron's eyes, they were partners in boredom and ludicrousness. As far as Coleridge is concerned, even such a more broadly sympathetic reader as Hazlitt found the next poem utterly destitute of value. It exhibits from beginning to end not a ray of genius, raving, drivelling nonsense. With friends like that, and Hazlitt was a friend of Coleridge, who needs enemies? And this is the poem Hazlitt was writing about.
In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alph, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground with walls and towers were girdled round, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree, and here were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. But oh, that deep romantic chasm which slanted down the green hill athwart a cedarn cover, a savage place, as holy and enchanted as e'er beneath a waning moon was haunted by woman wailing for her demon lover. And from this chasm, with ceaseless turmoil seething, as if this earth in fast, thick pants were breathing, a mighty fountain momently was forced, amid whose swift, half-intermitted burst, huge fragments vaulted like rebounding hail, or chaffy grain beneath the thresher's flail. And mid these dancing rocks, at once and ever, it flung up momently the sacred river. 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion through wood and dale the sacred river ran, then reached the caverns, measureless to man, and sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean. And mid this tumult, Kubla heard from far ancestral voices prophesying war. The shadow of the dome of pleasure floated midway on the waves, where was heard the mingled measure from the fountain and the caves. It was a miracle of rare device, a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. A damsel with a dulcimer in a vision once I saw. It was an Abyssinian maid, and on her dulcimer she played, singing of Mount Arbora. Could I revive within me her symphony and song, to such a deep delight would win me, that with music loud and long I would build that dome in air, that sunny dome, those caves of ice, and all who heard should see them there, and all should cry, beware, beware, his flashing eyes, his floating hair, weave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread, for he on honeydew hath fed, and drunk the milk of paradise.
That vein of what one might call Oriental Rococo was something Coleridge shared with other contemporaries. In 1817, the Irish poet Thomas Moore achieved not only British but European fame and success with his Lalla Rookh, a series of tales of the East which nowadays are pretty well unreadable, or so I find. But Tom Moore, admired by Byron, it ought to be said, had a seductively lyrical Irish mode which comes out in his actual songs for performance. And here, in this lyric from Lalla Rookh, it's mixed with the exotic Orient. The Peris lament for Hinder. A Peri is the offspring of the fallen angels.
Farewell, farewell to thee, Araby's daughter, thus warbled a Peri beneath the dark sea. No pearl ever lay under Oman's green water, more pure in its shell than thy spirit in thee. Oh, fair as the sea-flower close to thee growing, how light was thy heart till love's witchery came, like the wind of the south o'er a summer lute blowing, and hushed all its music and withered its frame. But long upon Araby's green sunny highlands shall maids and their lovers remember the doom of her who lies sleeping among the pearl islands, with naught but the sea-star to light up her tomb. And still, when the merry date season is burning, and calls to the palm groves the young and the old, the happiest there from their pastime returning, at sunset will weep when thy story is told. The young village maid, when with flowers she dresses her dark flowing hair for some festival day, will think of thy fate, till, neglecting her tresses, she mournfully turns from the mirror away. Nor shall Iran, beloved of her hero, forget thee, though tyrants watch over her tears as they start. Close, close by the side of that hero she'll set thee, embalmed in the innermost shrine of her heart. Farewell, be it ours to embellish thy pillow with everything beauteous that grows in the deep. Each flower of the rock and each gem of the billow shall sweeten thy bed and illumine thy sleep. Around thee shall glisten the loveliest amber that ever the sorrowing sea-bird has wept, with many a shell in whose hollow reefed chamber we, Peris of ocean, by moonlight have slept. We'll dive where the gardens of coral lie darkling, and plant all the rosiest stems at thy head. We'll seek where the sands of the Caspian are sparkling, and gather their gold to strew over thy bed. Farewell, farewell, until pity's sweet fountain is lost in the hearts of the fair and the brave. They'll weep for the chieftain who died on that mountain. They'll weep for the maiden who sleeps in this wave.
Contrast with the heady perfume of Tom Moore and of Coleridge the plain severity of the next. George Crabbe was approvingly and famously encapsulated by Byron, though nature's sternest painter, yet the best. His patch of coastal Suffolk was commemorated in such long poems as The Village and The Borough, and in our day given wider currency by Benjamin Britten's use of the story of Peter Grimes. Crabbe published the poem from which that story comes, The Borough, in 1810. Also from The Borough is this fragment of a detailed portrait of the life of the poor, using an old technique, Pope's technique, but to entirely different ends.
On swinging shelf are things incongruous stored, scraps of their food, the cards and cribbage board, with pipes and pouches, while on peg below hang a lost member's fiddle and its bow, that still reminds them how he'd dance and play, ere sent untimely to the convict's bay. Here by a curtain, by a blanket there, are various beds concealed, but none with care, where some by day and some by night, as best suit their employments, seek uncertain rest. The drowsy children at their pleasure creep to the known crib, and there securely sleep. Each end contains a grate, and these beside are hung utensils for their boiled and fried, all used at any hour, by night, by day, as suit the purse, the person, or the prey. Above the fire, the mantel-shelf contains of chinaware some poor, unmatched remains. There many a teacup's gaudy fragment stands, all placed by vanity's unwearied hands. For here she lives, e'en here she looks about, to find some small consoling objects out. Nor heed these Spartan dames their house, nor sit mid cares domestic. They nor sew nor knit, but of their fate discourse, their ways, their wars with armed authorities, their scapes and scars. These lead to present evils, and a cup, if fortune granted, winds description up. High hung at either end, and next the wall, two ancient mirrors show the forms of all, in all their force. These aid them in their dress, but with the good the evils too express, doubling each look of care, each token of distress.
Leigh Hunt, at 29, was already a well-known, not to say notorious, editor and literary journalist. He was also the friend and entrepreneur of many poets, and it was he who both published Keats and Shelley and introduced them to one another. One day, early in 1818, Hunt, Keats and Shelley sat down to write a sonnet about the river Nile. Keats recorded the event. I think on this occasion the result was surprising, in that the best of the three poems turned out to be by the least regarded of the trio nowadays. Here is Leigh Hunt's sonnet, The Nile.
It flows through old hushed Egypt and its sands, like some grave mighty thought threading a dream, and times and things, as in that vision, seem keeping along it their eternal stands, caves, pillars, pyramids, the shepherd bands that roamed through the young world, the glory extreme of high Sesostris, and that southern beam, the laughing queen that caught the world's great hands. Then comes a mightier silence, stern and strong, as of a world left empty of its throng, and the void weighs on us, and then we wake, and hear the fruitful stream lapsing along twixt villages, and think how we shall take our own calm journey on, for human sake.
The year before that poem was written, in 1817, John Keats published his first book of poems, and it's a mark of his regard that he dedicated it to Leigh Hunt, with this poem addressed to his friend and mentor. Not his best known, or indeed his best work, but for all that very characteristically Keatsian.
Glory and loveliness have passed away. For if we wander out in early morn, no wreathed incense do we see upborne into the east to meet the smiling day. No crowd of nymphs, soft-voiced and young and gay, in woven baskets bringing ears of corn, roses and pinks and violets to adorn the shrine of Flora in her early May. But there are left delights as high as these, and I shall ever bless my destiny that in a time when under pleasant trees Pan is no longer sought, I feel a free, a leafy luxury, seeing I could please with these poor offerings a man like thee.
But it was with Endymion, published in 1818, that Keats's membership of the Leigh Hunt Circle earned the first blows of guilt by association. It was attacked in Blackwood's and in the Quarterly. I think no one now would argue that Endymion, or much of Endymion, is Keats at his best. But it was this poem which first drew attention to him, and these lines from Book 1 need no further preface.
The thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases, it will never pass into nothingness, but still will keep a bower quiet for us, and a sleep full of sweet dreams, and health, and quiet breathing. Therefore, on every morrow are we wreathing a flowery band to bind us to the earth, spite of despondence, of the inhuman dearth of noble natures, of the gloomy days, of all the unhealthy and o'er-darkened ways made for our searching. Yes, in spite of all, some shape of beauty moves away the pall from our dark spirits. Such the sun, the moon, trees old and young sprouting a shady boon for simple sheep, and such are daffodils with the green world they live in, and clear rills that for themselves a cooling covert make against the hot season. The mid-forest brake, rich with a sprinkling of fair musk-rose blooms. And such too is the grandeur of the dooms we have imagined for the mighty dead, all lovely tales that we have heard or read, an endless fountain of immortal drink, pouring unto us from the heavens' brink.
The next programme in the series will see Keats's final extraordinary blaze of activity, as it will Shelley's. But now, with Shelley, I want to register a precise moment in time, caught by him forever, in his bitter sonnet, England in 1819, a moment of impotent rage, despair, and loathing.
An old, mad, blind, despised and dying king. Princes, the dregs of their dull race, who flow through public scorn, mud from a muddy spring. Rulers who neither see nor feel nor know, but leech-like to their fainting country cling till they drop blind in blood without a blow. A people starved and stabbed in the untilled field. An army which liberticide and prey makes as a two-edged sword to all who wield. Golden and sanguine laws which tempt and slay. Religion Christless, godless, a book sealed. A senate, time's worst statute unrepealed, are graves, from which a glorious phantom may burst to illumine our tempestuous day.
Alongside that vitriolic but limited response to a decaying tyranny, a longer view, equally tersely expressed, but I think facing with ironical relief the distancing of history, facing the certainty that these things will pass, and itself becoming a monument to such certainty. Shelley's sonnet, Ozymandias.
I met a traveller from an antique land, who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away."
A book published in 1810 probably went into more homes between that date and, say, 1870 or so, than any other I've included in this programme. Jane and Anne Taylor's Hymns for Infant Minds, which drew on a couple of earlier collections of theirs with similar titles. It included a poem which was still so well known half a century later that Lewis Carroll could parody it without anyone needing to draw attention to the fact.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the blazing sun is gone, when he nothing shines upon, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle, all the night. Then the traveller in the dark thanks you for your tiny spark. He could not see which way to go if you did not twinkle so. In the dark blue sky you keep, and often through my curtains peep, for you never shut your eye till the sun is in the sky. As your bright and tiny spark lights the traveller in the dark, though I know not what you are, twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Catherine Fanshawe was a more serious, more adult poet than that. She also had enough skill and enough sense of humour to write one of the very best parodies of Wordsworth, the only parody of himself to which Wordsworth gave assent. But probably her most popular poem at the time was a light tour de force which has sometimes wrongly been attributed to Byron. Here, designed as the subtitle has it to illustrate the sound of the letter H, is An Enigma by Catherine Fanshawe.
'Twas in heaven pronounced, and 'twas muttered in hell. An echo caught faintly the sound as it fell. On the confines of earth 'twas permitted to rest, and the depths of the ocean its presence confessed. 'Twill be found in the sphere when 'tis riven asunder, be seen in the lightning and heard in the thunder. 'Twas allotted to man with his earliest breath, attends at his birth, and awaits him in death. Presides o'er his happiness, honour, and health, is the prop of his house, and the end of his wealth. In the heaps of the miser 'tis hoarded with care, but is sure to be lost on his prodigal heir. It begins every hope, every wish it must bound. With the husbandman toils, and with monarchs is crowned. Without it the soldier, the seaman may roam, but woe to the wretch who expels it from home. In the whispers of conscience its voice will be found, nor e'en in the whirlwind of passion be drowned. 'Twill not soften the heart, but though deaf be the ear, it will make it acutely and instantly hear. Yet in shade let it rest, like a delicate flower. Ah, breathe on it softly, it dies in an hour.
It was in the last couple of years of this decade that Byron wrote the first 5 cantos of what most readers today would call his masterpiece, Don Juan. It was a controversial work, and he knew it. He was already extremely famous, as much as anything on the strength of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, published earlier in the decade. But not many people now, surely, would argue that Childe Harold survives in the way that Don Juan does. Here are the first few stanzas of what landed on John Murray's desk one day late in 1818, to be published anonymously the following July.
I want a hero, an uncommon want, when every year and month sends forth a new one, till, after cloying the gazettes with cant, the age discovers he is not the true one. Of such as these I should not care to vaunt. I'll therefore take our ancient friend, Don Juan. We all have seen him in the pantomime, sent to the devil somewhat ere his time. Vernon, the Butcher Cumberland, Wolfe, Hawke, Prince Ferdinand, Granby, Burgoyne, Keppel, Howe, evil and good, have had their tithe of talk, and filled their signposts then, like Wellesley now. Each in their turn, like Banquo's monarchs, stalk, followers of fame, 9 Pharaoh of that sow. France, too, had Bonaparte and Dumouriez, recorded in the Moniteur and Courrier. Barnave, Brissot, Condorcet, Mirabeau, Pétion, Cloutz, Danton, Marat, Lafayette were French, and famous people, as we know. And there were others, scarce forgotten yet, Joubert, Hoche, Marceau, Lannes, Desaix, Moreau, with many of the military set, exceedingly remarkable at times, but not at all adapted to my rhymes. Nelson was once Britannia's god of war, and still should be so, but the tide is turned. There's no more to be said of Trafalgar. 'Tis with our hero quietly inurned, because the army's grown more popular, at which the naval people are concerned. Besides, the prince is all for the land service, forgetting Duncan, Nelson, Howe, and Jervis. Brave men were living before Agamemnon, and since, exceeding valorous and sage, a good deal like him too, though quite the same none. But then they shone not on the poet's page, and so have been forgotten. I condemn none, but can't find any in the present age fit for my poem, that is, for my new one. So, as I said, I'll take my friend Don Juan.